Hello everyone and welcome to my channel Y&R Trends. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Christian stood frozen, the words hanging in the air like a bomb that nobody saw coming. "Dad," he whispered, and the room seemed to shatter around Adam and Nick as if time itself had slowed to witness this moment. The weight of every secret, every lie, every manipulation pressing down on them like a relentless storm. For weeks, Adam had been convinced he was on the verge of unraveling Sharon's latest scheme, believing he had finally outmaneuvered her, thinking her guilt would spill from her in confession, yet here he was, utterly blindsided. Nick's jaw tightened, disbelief etched deep across his face as he watched the child he had known as Christian reach out, unknowingly or perhaps unknowingly cementing a truth that neither of them had been able to grasp fully until now. The very essence of family, the bonds that had been tangled in secrecy and betrayal, now demanded recognition, raw and unfiltered. Every step Christian had taken toward Matt had been innocent, natural, the child seeking safety, love, and the anchor he had always known was there but was never named aloud until this instant. Sharon's presence in the room seemed almost spectral, her hands clutched together nervously, her eyes flicking between Adam, Nick, and Matt as if searching for some permission, some sign that the universe had approved the revelation she had orchestrated in ways both cunning and desperate. She had fooled them, both Adam and Nick, believing that her lies were intricate enough to maintain the delicate balance she had created. Yet Christian's words, so simple, so pure, unraveled the tapestry she had painstakingly woven. Adam's mind raced, recalling every conversation, every manipulation, every subtle nudging Sharon had done to ensure that her version of the truth stayed hidden, to convince him that Christian's allegiances were something he could control, something he could direct toward his own selfish aims. Yet the boy's natural instinct, his pure heart, had refused to be swayed. Matt, meanwhile, felt a surge of emotions that threatened to drown him: shock, awe, and indescribable warmth, because in that single word, Dad, every sacrifice he had made, every moment he had endured in silence had been recognized. He had always known Christian as a child, always loved him, always been there in moments that no one else could witness, but to hear the acknowledgement aloud, to feel the child call him by a name that carried the weight of family, of legitimacy, of belonging, it broke him in ways that words could never describe. Sharon, standing a few steps away, felt the room's energy shift, sensing that her carefully laid plans were crumbling, her control slipping like sand through desperate fingers, and she realized in that instant that no amount of deception could outmatch the innate truths that children carried in their hearts. Nick's hands went to his temples as he tried to process the implications, Adam's sharp eyes narrowing as he pieced together every lie he had believed, every story he had been told, and how the real story, the truth that had been buried under layers of secrecy, had now revealed itself in the purest form. A child's trust, a child's bond, spoken aloud in the simplest word, Dad. The tension was unbearable, thick as smoke, as Christian approached Matt. Small steps but filled with the certainty that only children possess when they know their safe place, their protector, their anchor in a world of chaos and manipulation. And Matt, stooping to meet Christian eye to eye, felt every nerve in his body ignite with an electric rush of responsibility, love, and uncontainable emotion. He wrapped his arms around Christian, holding him as if never to let go, feeling the weight of both the past and the future collide in that embrace. Adam's mind, sharp as ever, was spinning, trying to decipher whether this moment could be leveraged, whether Sharon had orchestrated it as a trap, whether Nick's shock could be transformed into an advantage, but even his strategic mind faltered in the face of the raw honesty that Christian had delivered without pretense or strategy. Sharon's lips quivered, a mixture of guilt, fear, and a strange pride shimmering across her features because even though she had hidden so much, even though she had convinced Adam and Nick of certain truths, she had also created a safe environment in which Christian could love, and in which Matt could be the father he deserved to be. The room felt smaller, compressed by the weight of emotion, and yet larger, expanded by the immensity of revelation, as every eye fixed on Christian and Matt, witnessing a pivotal moment that would ripple across every relationship in Genoa City. Adam's hands clenched, his mind racing through every conversation, every misstep, every subtle clue he had ignored, realizing that he had been outmaneuvered not by malice but by the natural course of human connection that no amount of manipulation could entirely suppress. Nick, though stunned, felt a cautious warmth blooming in his chest, knowing that Matt, a man who had always strived to protect and love, was finally recognized in the way that mattered most, even as the chaotic implications of the revelation promised to stir further storms with Sharon and Adam. Christian's voice, though small, resonated with the power of undeniable truth, a simple declaration that could not be undone, a truth that would forever shape loyalties, relationships, and the fragile balances of family in the aftermath. And Sharon, standing there, felt her carefully constructed narrative begin to unravel, but also a strange relief. The child had spoken the truth that no manipulation could suppress, proving that even amidst lies, love and genuine connection would always find a way to shine through, and perhaps in that glimmer of truth redemption might be possible even for her. Matt held Christian tightly, feeling the pulse of the boy's heartbeat against his chest, a rhythmic reassurance of life, hope, and the unbreakable bond they now shared publicly, no longer confined to whispers or shadows. Adam's eyes darted, searching for any sign that the situation could still be turned to his advantage, but even he could not deny the profound gravity of the moment. The innocence of Christian's words had cut through decades of deception, exposing Sharon's failed attempt to control the narrative, and forcing every adult in the room to reckon with the reality they had tried so hard to avoid. Nick, torn between disbelief and relief, felt a subtle shift in his perspective, recognizing that the foundation of family was not built on secrets or manipulation, but on trust, love, and acknowledgement, the simple recognition of one's rightful place, as Christian had so courageously and unknowingly demonstrated. Every second stretched into eternity as the implications of Christian's declaration reverberated, threatening to upend alliances, expose hidden agendas, and challenge the very notion of who belonged to whom in the tangled web of Genoa City's most secret of hearts. Sharon, meanwhile, felt a piercing pang of guilt and yet an undeniable warmth, knowing that her actions, though flawed, had created an environment in which Christian felt safe enough to call Matt Dad. And that perhaps in the chaos of lies and truths, a glimmer of authenticity could survive, could thrive, could redefine everything. Matt, still holding Christian, felt tears sting his eyes as he finally allowed himself to fully absorb the moment, the culmination of years of silent devotion, the quiet heroism of showing up when it mattered most, and the vindication of having his role as a father recognized in the purest, simplest, most profound way imaginable. Adam, unable to mask the storm inside, took a tentative step forward, a question forming on his lips, a challenge to Sharon and perhaps to fate itself, but the words seemed hollow against the undeniable power of the bond between Matt and Christian. Nick, feeling the delicate threads of family stretch taut across the room, realized that the consequences of this revelation would ripple outward, affecting decisions, relationships, and loyalties in ways that could never be fully predicted. Yet for this single shimmering moment, the raw truth had triumphed over deception, and Christian's voice had spoken a reality that no one could deny. Sharon, trembling yet proud in her own conflicted way, allowed herself a faint smile, knowing that despite everything, the child's love and trust had transcended manipulation, and that perhaps in the midst of lies, a foundation of honesty and recognition had finally been laid, fragile but undeniable. The air crackled with tension, history, and emotion, each heartbeat echoing the significance of what had just occurred. Each eye locked on the boy who had unknowingly reshaped the destinies of everyone in the room, and as Matt knelt, embracing Christian fully, the world outside seemed to pause, honoring the unspoken truth that love, trust, and family could never truly be fabricated, only recognized, and Christian, in that single word, Dad, had done precisely that, shaking the foundations of deception and forcing every adult to confront a reality that would echo through Genoa City forever. The air was heavy with a tension that seemed to press against every wall, every piece of furniture, every breath as Christian clung to Matt, his small hands gripping the fabric of his father's shirt, his voice still reverberating with the profound simplicity of the word he had just spoken, a word that carried so much weight that Adam could feel the chill of its reality creeping into his bones, a reality he had been blind to despite his constant scheming, plotting, and vigilance. And as he watched Matt kneel and wrap himself around Christian, Adam felt a creeping panic, the kind that gnaws at the edges of even the sharpest minds, a realization that no manipulation, no clever scheme, no careful orchestration could override the raw, undeniable truth that had just been uttered in a voice so small yet so powerful that it had shaken the very foundation of everything Adam believed he understood about family loyalty, and the intricate web of deceit that had consumed Genoa City for decades. Nick, meanwhile, struggled to process the conflicting emotions flooding through him, shock and disbelief warring with a cautious hope, A recognition that perhaps, despite the countless betrayals, mistakes, and lies that had defined their lives, a pure and uncorrupted bond had emerged, one that even Sharon could not fully control, and yet Sharon herself was paralyzed, caught between the relief that Christian was safe, that Matt's role as a father was validated in the most sacred way possible, and the gnawing dread that her carefully constructed facade, the one she had relied upon to maintain influence over both Adam and Nick, had been exposed in the most inescapable way, leaving her vulnerable, unprotected, and yet oddly proud that the child she had nurtured, protected, and loved could pierce through layers of deceit with nothing more than a single word, a single acknowledgement, a declaration of belonging that carried more power than any argument, confrontation, or revelation she could have staged. Matt, still holding Christian close, felt the surge of emotions grow overwhelming, a tidal wave of joy, relief, pride, and awe crashing over him with every heartbeat, each pulse a reminder of every moment he had sacrificed, every challenge he had endured, every fear he had hidden behind a stoic exterior, all culminating in this instant where the child's trust and love rendered all past struggles meaningless, proving that even in a world riddled with secrets, betrayals, and power plays, the purest truths of family could not be denied, manipulated, or diminished, a lesson that Adam, sharp and calculating as he was, had to face with a reluctant acknowledgement that sometimes, the human heart, especially that of a child, could outmaneuver even the most cunning adult mind. Adam's eyes narrowed, his mind racing as he tried to reconstruct the sequence of events that had led to this undeniable reality, trying to find a thread, a loophole, a justification that could restore his sense of control. But no matter how he twisted the narrative in his mind, no matter how he replayed Sharon's past actions, the undeniable, unchangeable truth of Christian's words stood firm, like an immovable rock in a sea of deception, and Adam felt, for the first time in what felt like an eternity, the creeping terror of powerlessness, the realization that some forces, love, trust, the unbreakable bond between parent and child, operated beyond strategy, beyond manipulation, beyond even the most brilliant machinations he could conceive. Nick, sensing Adam's inner turmoil, allowed himself a quiet moment of reflection, the chaos and confusion in his mind tempered by the undeniable joy of witnessing a child acknowledge a father, a bond that had always existed in quiet moments, in silent gestures, in subtle reassurances, now brought to the forefront by Christian's innocent courage, and he realized, with a mixture of relief and anxiety, that the implications of this moment would ripple far beyond the immediate circle, affecting alliances, loyalties, and the delicate balance of influence in Genoa City, forcing each player to reconsider not just their next move, but the very foundation upon which their actions had been based, a foundation that had now been shaken to its core by nothing more than a child's instinctive truth. Sharon, observing the reactions of both Adam and Nick, felt the weight of responsibility press down, a crushing reminder of the risks she had taken, the lies she had told, and the constant juggling act she had performed to maintain stability, control, and influence. Yet within that same weight, a spark of hope flickered, fragile but persistent, a recognition that despite the exposure of her manipulations, the ultimate outcome, Christian's happiness, Matt's validation, the preservation of the child's sense of family, had been achieved, a bittersweet victory that left her both proud and terrified, an emotional contradiction that left her trembling as she watched the interplay of emotions unfold in the room. Matt, still holding Christian, could feel the child's heartbeat against his chest, each pulse a reassurance, a reminder that this bond, once uncertain, was now cemented in the most profound, irrevocable way possible, and he knew that every challenge, every confrontation, every obstacle faced over the years had led to this moment of clarity and recognition, a moment that would redefine relationships, shift power dynamics, and create a new reality in which truth, love, and family ties could no longer be denied or manipulated. Adam's mind, in overdrive, began analyzing every possible outcome, every potential response, every angle of leverage he might still have. Yet the more he examined the situation, the more he realized that the core truth, the unassailable bond between Matt and Christian, was untouchable, impervious to strategy or scheming, and for the first time, he understood the limits of control, the boundaries that even his intellect could not breach, and the terrifying yet awe-inspiring reality that sometimes, the simplest expressions of love carried more power than the most intricate plans of manipulation. Nick, while processing this revelation, felt an unexpected surge of gratitude, not just for Matt, but for Christian, for Sharon, for the resilience and persistence of human connection in the face of overwhelming deception, and he acknowledged silently that the road ahead would be fraught with challenges, confrontations, and inevitable fallout, but for this singular moment, the pure recognition of truth had triumphed, a testament to the enduring power of familial bonds, trust, and the courage of a child to speak what adults could not always admit or confront. Sharon's thoughts swirled, a storm of guilt, relief, pride, and fear, each emotion battling for dominance as she recognized that while she had been outmaneuvered by the purity of Christian's instincts, she had also facilitated an environment in which the child could thrive, love could be affirmed, and truth, however delayed, could emerge victorious, a paradoxical triumph that left her reeling yet undeniably satisfied that the essence of family had been preserved despite the chaos, the lies, and the countless games of manipulation she had endured. Matt, feeling Christian's arms tighten around him, allowed himself a rare moment of vulnerability, tears stinging his eyes as he absorbed the full weight of what had just transpired, recognizing the courage it had taken for the child to speak, the profound impact of that single word, and the irreversible shift in the dynamics of every relationship present, a shift that promised both challenges and opportunities in equal measure, but above all, a validation of love, dedication, and the enduring power of fatherhood. Adam, wrestling with his own emotions, could not ignore the subtle yet undeniable truth that Christian's acknowledgement had not only validated Matt but exposed the limitations of his own manipulations, forcing a reassessment of strategy, intent, and the very nature of influence in a world where innocence and truth could disrupt even the most calculated plans, and he felt a mix of fear, admiration, and reluctant respect for the simplicity and power of the child's act. Nick, observing the entire scene, allowed himself a quiet smile, a mixture of relief, pride, and cautious optimism, understanding that the road ahead would be complicated, but that the undeniable foundation of trust and love demonstrated by Christian's recognition of Matt as his father offered hope, a guiding light through the murky waters of deception, rivalry, and human complexity that define Genoa City. Sharon, finally taking a deep breath, acknowledged internally that despite the exposure, the loss of control, and the chaos that would inevitably follow, Christian's words represented the ultimate triumph of honesty, trust, and familial connection, a triumph that could not be diminished by scheming, manipulation, or deceit, and she allowed herself a fleeting moment of satisfaction in knowing that, above all else, the child she had loved, nurtured, and protected had spoken a truth that would resonate across every life in that room, a truth that would forever redefine the boundaries of loyalty, love, and the indomitable power of a parent-child bond. And as the room settled into a tense, emotionally charged silence, every eye fixed on Matt and Christian, the reverberations of that single word, that single acknowledgement, could be felt across the fabric of Genoa City, promising both turmoil and hope in equal measure, a delicate balance of chaos and clarity that only the most profound, unmanipulated truths could achieve. And for Matt, for Christian, for Adam, Nick, and Sharon, the course of their intertwined destinies had shifted irreversibly, a moment that would be remembered, analyzed, and felt for years to come, all sparked by a child's instinctive recognition, a father's embrace, and the undeniable force of love that no deception could ever truly suppress. As the echo of Christian's word, "Dad," lingered in the room, an almost tangible shift seemed to ripple through the very air itself, a quiet but undeniable acknowledgement that nothing could ever be the same again. And while Matt held Christian tightly, feeling the boy's small body tremble with a mixture of relief and lingering fear, he realized that this moment was both a culmination and a beginning, a bridge between past sacrifices and future challenges, and yet the complexity of emotions surrounding them made it impossible to simply breathe in relief. Adam, pacing in quiet agitation, wrestled with the duality of admiration for Christian's courage and frustration at how completely he had been blindsided, how a child's pure instinct had circumvented every carefully laid plan, every subtle maneuver he had thought would guarantee control, forcing him to confront a terrifying truth, that the human heart, even in the smallest, most innocent vessel, could wield power that no strategy could contain. And he felt the faintest pang of something unfamiliar, respect, mingled with fear, and perhaps even a begrudging understanding of what genuine love could accomplish. Nick, meanwhile, allowed himself to notice the subtle warmth emanating from Christian, the silent but profound bond strengthening before his eyes, a bond that seemed to insulate Matt and the boy from the chaos of manipulation swirling around them, And he realized with cautious optimism that while Sharon's secrets and past schemes had sown confusion and hurt, the undeniable truth of this father-child connection had carved a space that even deception could not infiltrate, a rare sanctuary of trust, validation, and unconditional love. Sharon, hands trembling yet clutching the edge of her coat, understood with bittersweet clarity that she had lost control in the most beautiful way possible, that her child had chosen authenticity over deceit, trust over fear, and in doing so, had rewritten the emotional landscape of every adult in the room, leaving them to navigate the aftermath of her lies while simultaneously witnessing the undeniable triumph of love's quiet, persistent, unstoppable power.